Chapter number 16, ICAI study material questions. Case study number 1. JKT Private Limited having 40 lakhs paid up capital, 9.5 crores reserves and turnover of last 3 years consecutive financial years immediately preceding the financial year under audit being 49 crores, 145 crores and 260 crores, but does not have any internal audit system. In view of the management, the internal audit system is not mandatory. Comment. Applicability of provisions of internal audit. As per Section 138 of Companies Act 2013, read with Rule 13 of Company Audit and Auditors Rules 2014, every private company shall be required to appoint an internal auditor or a firm of internal auditors having turnover of 200 crores or more during the preceding financial year, or outstanding loans or borrowings from banks or public financial institutions exceeding 100 crore rupees, that is 100 crore rupees or more at any point of time during the preceding financial year, is mandatorily required to appoint internal auditor. Conclusion: in the instant case, JKT Private Limited is having a turnover of 260 crores during the preceding financial year, which is more than 200 crores. Hence, the company has the statutory requirement to appoint an internal auditor and mandatorily conduct an internal audit. Next, AB Private Limited company having outstanding loans and borrowings from banks exceeding 100 crore rupees wants to appoint Mr. X, a practicing cost accountant, as an internal auditor. Is the appointment of Mr. X valid? Provision and conclusion. According to the provision given in Section 138 of Companies Act 2013, the internal auditor shall either be a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, whether engaged in practice or not, or such other professional as may be decided by the board to conduct an internal audit of functions and activities of the companies. Thus, appointment of Mr. X as internal auditor of AB Private Limited is valid. Next, test your understanding 1. After an illustrious career in Indian Audit and Account Service for about 25 years, Pratik, a postgraduate in law, has taken voluntary retirement from the government service. Being in fine spirits, he wants to take responsibilities in corporate sector as chief internal auditor. On looking at attractive compensation packages, he applied for such position in a leading listing company engaged in oil refining business. The board of directors is keen on him due to his impressive credentials. Can he be appointed in this leading position of the said company? As per Section 138 of Companies Act 2013, the internal auditor shall either be a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, whether engaged in practice or not, or such other professional as may be decided by the board to conduct an internal audit of functions and activities of the company. The board can appoint any professional as may be decided by it. The applicant in the question is a law postgraduate and he has spent 25 years of his career in Indian Audit and Accounts Service. Therefore, he has got the necessary experience and skills required for the said vacancy. The board will be in a position to appoint such a competent and experienced person in the field of auditing as its chief internal officer, chief internal auditor. Next, test your understanding question number 2. CA Deva is internal auditor of a listed company. The company wants to make sure that it is in compliance with SEBI requirements at all times and it is never on the wrong side of the law. It asks its internal auditor to manage its compliance tracking system, including directly corresponding with regulator in this regard. The profile and scope of internal audit agreed at the time of appointment included compliance with laws and regulations. Can he perform such type of activities in capacity of internal auditor of the company? The internal auditor does not assume any responsibility to manage or operate the compliance framework or to take compliance related decisions. It is not responsibility of the internal auditor to execute or resolve compliance related risks. That is, example, engaging directly with the regulators, etc. Although internal audit function provides independent assurance to enhance governance, which includes compliance with the laws and regulations, it does not assume operational responsibility of its compliance framework. It is the responsibility of the management. He is responsible for auditing the compliance framework and not managing it. Similarly, he does not accept compliance related risks like directly engaging with a regulator. Next, test your understanding question number 3. Updown Limited is in doldrums since last 2 years. The demand for its products has declined drastically. The statutory auditor is of the view that situation has put in question going concern assumption of the company. Its internal auditor has helped management in devising a strategy to deal with such risks and come out of the situation. The plan includes venturing into different product lines using same plant with minor modifications. Further, internal auditor has also prepared estimates of revenue generation along with cash flows. Can statutory auditor place total reliance on work performed by internal auditor in this regard? The greater the judgment needed to be exercised in planning and performing the audit procedures and evaluating the audit evidence, the external auditor will need to perform more procedures directly because using the work of the internal audit function alone will not provide the external auditor with sufficient appropriate audit evidence. The appropriate use of going concern assumption requires significant judgment on part of the statutory auditor. Therefore, statutory auditor cannot place total reliance on internal auditor's work in this regard, and he should perform more procedures directly. Next question, illustration 2. The managing director of X Limited is concerned about a high employee attrition rate in his company. As the internal auditor of the company, he requests you to analyze the causes for the same. What factors would you consider in such analysis? Factors responsible for high employee attrition rate are as under job stress and work life imbalance, wrong policies of the management, unbearable behavior of the senior staff, safety factors, limited opportunities for promotion, low monetary benefits, lack of labor welfare schemes, whether the organization has properly qualified and experienced personnel for the various levels of work, is the number of people employed at various work centers excessive or inadequate, does the organization provide facilities for staff training so that employees and workers keep themselves abreast of current techniques and practices? Next, test your knowledge question number 1. Write a short notes on internal audit report. Internal audit report. The internal auditor should carefully review and assess the conclusions drawn from the audit evidence obtained as the basis for his findings contained in his report and suggest remedial action. However, in case the internal auditor comes across any actual or suspected fraud or any other misappropriation of assets, it would be more appropriate for him to bring the same immediately to the attention of the management. As per standards on internal audit, SIA 370, reporting results, reporting of internal audit results is generally undertaken in two stages. At the end of a particular audit assignment, an internal audit report covering a specific area, functions, or part of the entity is prepared by the internal auditor, highlighting key observations arising from those assignments. This report is generally issued with the details of the manner in which the assignment was conducted and the key findings from the audit procedures undertaken. This report is issued to the auditee with copies shared with the local and executive management and as agreed during the planning phase. On periodical basis, at the close of a planning period, a comprehensive report of all the internal audit activities covering the entity and the plan period is prepared by chief internal auditor or the engagement partner in case of external service provider. Such reporting is normally done on quarterly basis and submitted to the highest governing authority responsible for internal audits, generally the audit committee. Some part of the aforementioned internal audit reports, aforementioned internal audit reports may form part of periodic, that is quarterly report shared with the audit committee. Next, test your knowledge question number 2. State the important aspects to be considered by external auditor in the evaluation of internal audit function. Evaluation of internal audit functions by external auditor. The external auditor's general evaluation of internal audit function will assist him in determining the extent to which he can place reliance upon the work of the internal auditor. The external auditor should document his evaluation and conclusions in this respect. The important aspects to be considered in this context are organizational status, scope of function, technical competence, due professional care. Organizational status: whether internal audit is undertaken by an outside agency or by an internal audit department within the entity itself, the internal auditor reports to the management. In an ideal situation, his reports to the his reports to the highest level of management and are free of any other operating responsibility. Any constraints or restrictions placed upon his work by management should be carefully evaluated. In particular, the internal auditor should be free to communicate fully with the external auditor. Next, scope of work. The external auditor should ascertain the nature and depth of the coverage of the assignment which the internal auditor discharges for management. He should also ascertain to what extent the management considers and where appropriate acts upon internal audit recommendations. Technical competence. The external auditor should ascertain that internal audit work is performed by persons having adequate technical training and proficiency. This may be accomplished by reviewing the experience and professional qualifications of the persons undertaking the internal audit work. Next, due professional care. The external auditor should ascertain whether internal audit work appears to be properly planned, supervised, reviewed, and documented. An example of the exercise of due professional care by the internal auditor is the existence of adequate audit manuals, audit programs, and working papers. Next, test your knowledge question number 3. AB Private Limited Company has outstanding loans or borrowings from the banks exceeding 100 crore rupees, wants to appoint an internal auditor. Please guide him for the applicability of the same and who can be appointed as an internal auditor and what work should be reviewed by him. Applicability of internal audit. Section 138 of Companies Act 2013 states that every private limited company is required to conduct internal audit if its outstanding loans or borrowings from banks or public financial institutions exceeding 100 crore rupees or more at any point of time during the preceding financial year. In view of the above provisions, AB Private Limited is under compulsion to conduct internal audit as its loans or borrowings are falling under the prescribed limit. Who can be appointed as internal auditor? Internal auditor shall either be a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, whether engaged in practice or not, or such other professional as may be decided by the board to conduct internal audit of the functions and activities of the company. The internal auditor may or may not be an employee of the company. Work to be reviewed by internal auditor. The internal auditor should, in consultation with those charged with governance, including the audit committee, develop and document a plan for each internal audit engagement to help him conduct the engagement in an efficient and timely manner. Internal audit plan should be developed in such a manner that all the business processes covering both financial as well as operational activities are reviewed by internal audit function within a defined time cycle, also ensuring that appropriate consideration is made and adequate balance is ensured to the following: risk underlying the business process, value that the internal audit can provide to the organization, effort involved in conducting the internal audit for a particular business process, risk appetite of the organization, coverage of all auditable areas within the defined time range. In addition, each of the managerial function should be reviewed by the internal auditor. The scope of the internal auditor's work should also include a review of internal control system and procedures, custodianship and safeguarding of assets, compliance with policies, plans, procedures, and regulations, relevance and reliability of the information, organizational structure, utilization of resources, accomplishment of goals and objectives. Test your knowledge question number 4. Moon Limited, of which you are the statutory auditor, have an internal audit being conducted by an outside agency. State the factors that weigh considerations in opting to make use of direct assistance of internal auditors for the purpose of the statutory audit. Determining the nature and extent of work of the internal audit function that can be used. The external auditor shall not use the work of internal audit function if the external auditor determines that the function's organizational status and the relevant policies and procedures do not adequately support the objectivity of internal auditors, the function lacks sufficient competence, or the function does not apply a systematic and disciplined approach, including quality control. Determining the nature and extent of work of internal audit function that can be used. The external auditor shall consider nature and scope of work done and its relevance to overall strategy and audit plan, determining adequacy of the internal audit work for external auditors' purpose, objectivity of the internal audit functions, level of competence of internal audit function, whether a systematic and disciplined approach is applied in including quality control, determining whether in which areas and to what extent internal auditors can be used to provide direct assistance, nature and extent of work that can be assigned to the internal auditors providing direct assistance. The external auditor shall consider amount of judgment with respect to planning and performing relevant audit processes, evaluation of the audit evidence gathered, assess the risk of material misstatements, evaluation of existence and significance of threats. The external auditor shall not use internal auditors to provide direct assistance to perform procedures, making significant judgments in the audit related to higher assessed risk of material misstatements, where the judgment required is more than limited, related to work which is reported to the management or those charged with governance by internal audit function, related to decisions that external auditor makes in accordance with SA 610. Next, test your knowledge question number 5. Mr. A is appointed as a statutory auditor of XYZ Limited. XYZ Limited is required to appoint an internal auditor as per the statutory provisions given in the Companies Act 2013 and appointed Mr. B as its internal auditor. The external auditor, Mr. A, asked internal auditor to provide direct assistance to him regarding evaluating significant accounting estimates by the management and assessing the risk of material misstatements. Discuss whether Mr. A, statutory auditor, can ask direct assistance from Mr. B, internal auditor, as stated above in view of auditing standards. Will your answer be different if Mr. A asks direct assistance from Mr. B, internal auditor, with respect to external confirmation requests and evaluation of the results of external confirmation procedures? Direct assistance from internal auditor. As per SS16, using the work of internal auditor, the external auditor shall not use internal auditors to provide direct assistance to perform procedures that involve making significant judgments in the auditor. Since the external auditor has sole responsibility for the audit opinion expressed, the external auditor needs to make the significant judgments in the audit engagement. Significant judgments include the following: assessing the risk of material misstatements, evaluating the sufficiency of tests performed, evaluating the appropriateness of the management's use of the going concern assumption, evaluating significant accounting estimates, and evaluating the adequacy of disclosures in the financial statements and the matters affecting the auditor's report. In view of the above, Mr. A cannot ask direct assistance from internal auditors regarding evaluating significant accounting estimates and assessing the risk of material misstatements. Next, direct assistance from internal auditor in case of external confirmation procedures. SS16, using the work of internal auditor, provides relevant guidance in determining the nature and extent of the work that may be assigned to internal auditors. In determining the nature of work that may be assigned to internal auditors, the external auditor is careful to limit such work to those areas that would be appropriate to be assigned. Further, in accordance with SA 505, external confirmation, the external auditor is required to maintain control over external confirmation requests and evaluate the results of external confirmation procedures. It would not be appropriate to assign these responsibilities to internal auditors. However, internal auditors may assist in assembling information necessary for the external auditor to resolve exceptions in confirmation responses. Test your knowledge question number 6. The XYZ Limited has to appoint Mr. A as Chief Internal Auditor to lead the internal audit function for the company. The managing director of the company has asked the HR head to define the reporting structure of the Chief Internal Auditor so that he can discharge his duties objectively. Suggests the ideal reporting structure of a Chief Internal Auditor that HR head may propose to the managing director. HR head need to evaluate multiple options and identify most suitable option in light of the relevant provisions, guidance, and overall governance of the organization. HR head also needs to evaluate different options for his administrative reporting and various options for functional reporting of chief internal auditor. The possible options to be considered and evaluated includes board of directors, audit committee, managing director of the company, chief executive officer, or chief financial officer. As per Section 138 of Companies Act 2013, the internal auditor shall either be a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, whether engaged in practice or not, or such other professional as may be decided by the board to conduct an internal audit of the functions and the activities of the company. As per the revised definition of the term internal audit, as per para 3 of the ICAI framework governing internal audits, internal audit provides independent assurance on the effectiveness of the internal controls and risk management process to enhance governance and achieve organizational objectives. The internal auditor shall be free from any undue influences which force him to deviate from the truth. The independence shall be not only in mind but also in appearance. Also, the internal auditor shall resist any undue pressure or interference in establishing the scope of the assignments or the manner in which these are conducted and reported in case these deviate from set objectives. As per the requirements of above stated provision, chief internal chief internal auditor need to be independent of the operational activities and report of audit committee or board of directors to enjoy his true status of independent auditor. He may administratively report to CEO or managing director for his administrative reporting purpose or any other similar authority till the time it is approved by board of directors and it does not impact his independence to be able to perform his duties and report to audit committee or board of directors independently. Next, test your knowledge question number 7. The XYZ Limited has appointed Mr. A to conduct their internal audit for a new financial year. The audit committee requested Mr. A to present their internal audit plan for the next financial year. What approach would Mr. A follow to prepare the internal audit plan for the next year? The internal auditor should, in consultation with those charged with governance, including the audit committee, develop and document a plan for each internal audit assignment engagement to help him conduct the engagement in an efficient and timely manner. The internal audit plan should be developed in such a manner that all the business processes covering both financial as well as operational activities are reviewed by the internal audit function within a defined time scale. Also, ensuring that appropriate consideration is made and adequate balance is ensured to the following: risk underlying the business process, value that the internal audit can provide to the organization, effort involved in conducting the internal audit for a particular business process, risk appetite of the organization, coverage of all auditable areas within the defined time range. Test your knowledge question number 8. The XYZ Limited has appointed Mr. A to conduct their internal audit for the new financial year. The audit committee requested Mr. A to perform detailed analysis of their expenses in previous year and report all risks and underlying gaps. What audit approach should internal auditor follow to identify such gaps? To identify the gaps, the internal auditor needs to perform internal audit engagement. Typical internal audit engagement comprises of following 5 steps. Step 1, obtaining knowledge of the business and its environment. Step 2, performing audit planning. Step 3, gather required information. Step 4, perform audit checks. Step 5, reporting of internal audit issues. All these steps are required to be performed while performing any internal audit engagement in the same sequence. Next, test your knowledge question number 9. The XYZ Limited has appointed Mr. A to conduct their internal audit function for the next new financial year. The audit committee requested Mr. A to present detailed report on their findings in areas where immediate action is needed to mitigate critical risks. What should be the content of internal audit report to address this requirement of the audit committee? As per standards on internal audit, SA 370, reporting results, reporting of internal audit results is generally undertaken in two stages. At the end of particular audit assignment, an internal audit report covering a specific area, function, or part of the entity is prepared by the internal auditor, highlighting key observations arising from those assignments. This report is generally issued with details of the manner in which assignment was conducted and the key findings from the audit procedures undertaken. This report is issued to the auditee with copies shared with the local and executive management as agreed during the planning phase. On periodical basis, at the close of the plan period, a comprehensive report of all the internal audit activities covering the entity and the plan period is prepared by the chief internal auditor or the engagement partner in case of external service provider. Such reporting is normally done on quarterly basis and submitted to the highest governing authority responsible for internal audits, generally the audit committee. Some part of the aforementioned internal audit reports may form part of the periodic quarterly report shared with the audit committee. Accordingly, a typical internal audit report should include the following: audit scope performed, audit period covered, executive summary, summary of critical findings, detailed audit findings with elaboration on business impact and root cause of such issues, a rating of highlighted issues, example high, medium, low, in accordance to the rating criteria approved by audit committee, audit recommendation to improve control environment and address the highlighted finding, response received from the responsible functional authority containing action plan and target timelines for the action. Next, test your knowledge question number 10. XYZ Limited has appointed Mr. A to conduct their internal audit for new financial year. The audit committee requested Mr. A to present their analysis on the implementation of the recommendation of a previous audit report and highlight critical areas which need immediate attention of audit committee. What should be the steps followed by internal auditor to address this requirement of audit committee? As per SA 390, monitoring and reporting of prior audit issues, the chief internal auditor is responsible for continuously monitoring the closure of prior audit issues through timely implementation of action plans included in the past audits. This shall be done with a formal monitoring process, elements of which are pre-agreed with the management and those charged with governance. The responsibility to implement the action plans remains with the management. In monitoring and reporting of prior audit issues, the responsibility of the internal auditor is usually in the form of an action taken report (ATR) of the previous audits. To address the requirement of audit committee in the given situation, internal auditor should assess the action taken against the previous audit findings and report a summary of the action taken by the management. Typical action taken report may include the following: reference to the previous audit reporting containing the reported issues, implementation action agreed by the management along with the target implementation date, status of the action taken by the management. The same may be classified under implemented or not implemented, residual risk and rating for any unimplemented action, audit findings not implemented for long period of time, any critical audit findings that require immediate action or implementation.